not a high school student anymore. Oh, look at her, wow.
Photo, a little reflection. Nice.
Artistic, you know?
Yeah.
I had to pizzazz it up a little bit.
My wife likes the soft edges. That's what she goes towards.
I should have done this one like that too, but it's okay.
She wrote a letter to the Waterhouse. She wrote a letter to the current, the previous owner. Our kids can't wait to grow up here and because that's a housing market, and she's like adamant though, no, that's what got it. And she's like, I put the photo of the kids with the soft edges. So it's all about the soft difference.
My wife wanted to do that. I was like, no, that's fine.
That could.
If your offer is like similar,
yeah, that's what they came back with. They said, hey, if you match our top offer, it's yours.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
Okay. And so maybe that's all it was that, hey, we like this family.
You're not just a number.
Right. Something a little bit different than just on paper. So. Go grab my pen. Jennifer, are you ready to go? I don't know if you can hear me. Okay. Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's right around 6 o'clock. We'll try and get you out here a little bit early tonight so you can enjoy some of this nice weather. But appreciate everybody coming out to hear about this exciting project on the microphone, because we do have West Hartford Community Interactive televising the meeting tonight. So if there's anything that we talk about tonight, you can go online and recap anything you might have missed. So my name is Greg Sommer, West Hartford Town Engineer. I'm joined by Samar Karar, who's our project engineer that'll be designing this project. So we'll walk you through a brief presentation just to kind of orient you with the kind of some background information about the project, how we got here, share the concept plans that we started developing. Again, these are just concept early design concepts that we want to present. Really, the purpose of the meeting tonight is to get your input and feedback. So. Just so we know who's in the room, people that live on Sedgwick Road, quick show of hands, it's the majority, and then there's others that maybe live on side streets or nearby, and then others, maybe I see a couple that are some bike advocates, and maybe others that maybe attend Sedgwick School, things like that. And there's a few of those. Safety advocates, good, excellent. Thanks, Tracy. So we'll go through a quick overview of the project, talk about the proposed improvements, walk you through the concept, as I mentioned. We'll touch on schedule and cost, and then open it up for your comments. Project area, it's kind of divided into two pieces. The first section is really from South Main to Wardwell, and that's going to be a resurfacing, kind of a hybrid reconstruction project. And then the other piece, that pavement's in a little bit better condition. So we're not going to be doing a resurfacing of that section from Wardwell to Ridgewood, but we will carry the line striping through. So it'll be a continuous project. We'll probably look to repave that section a few years from now. But again, it wasn't really that bad as far as the pavement condition goes. How we got here, probably 5 years ago, we applied for a lot SIP grant, which is a local transportation capital improvement program through the state. So we received $1.25 million in funding. At that point, it was really just considered to be an opportunity for us to resurface the roadway. We weren't looking at really doing a whole lot more than that. Since that time, we've had, obviously, Vision Zero. Hopefully, folks are familiar with that. It's our initiative to eliminate roadway fatalities and serious crashes over the next 10-year span. So that's been our focus. And along with that, anytime we have a project, we're using that as an opportunity to, of course, enhance safety and implement anything that we feel could improve the pedestrian environment, the cyclists, any vulnerable users, really. So as part of this, and part of the reason we've kind of, it's taken us a few years to get out of the gates here with this one, we did what's called a road safety audit. That was last September. Interdisciplinary group of people. I think there was maybe 11 or 15 people that went out. So PD, engineering, planning. What am I missing? Folks from CT Transit, some bike advocates. There was some staff from Sedgwick Middle School as well. And then we had our consultant basically walk the corridor just to get a little different perspective than when you're driving the car. And everybody kind of brought their own unique ideas, raised concerns, and then from that, we generated a road safety audit report. So it provided not only those observations, but then also recommendations, which we'll go through tonight, and we're looking to incorporate into this project. So not just the resurfacing, but also safety improvements that we'll roll out as we go through this. Existing conditions, I won't spend a ton of time on it, but basically it's a 44-foot wide roadway width that we're working with. Not planning to move the curb lines, so the curbs will stay where they are, so we basically have that 44 feet to work with. But within that, we do have some opportunities to make some changes and some improvements. Travel lanes vary in width. We're looking to reduce that width from 11 to 15 feet down to probably about 10 feet. So that helps to slow traffic, acts as a calming device. Posted speed limit is 35 currently. Hopefully with some of the improvements that we implement, we're proposing that we would kind of work towards a design speed of 30 miles per hour. So we'd actually look to lower that as part of this project. About 8,000 vehicles per day, both directions. Combined, I mentioned the pavement condition, and then 84 crashes along this corridor. So that's another reason that we're looking at this to improve safety. The majority of those is at the South Main Street intersection. Obviously, that makes sense. And then another hotspot is, of course, at Ridgewood, both the signalized intersections at either end. Some of the proposed improvements, I mentioned we'll be doing the resurfacing on the eastern portion, and then just on the western half, we'll be doing lane restriping. That kind of ties in with the proposed lane arrangement. At the South Main Street intersection, one of the things we heard, there's that if you're driving westbound, you have that merge just beyond, again, a lot of nods. So we're working to eliminate that as part of this project, reconfiguring the lanes at the intersection. We'll show some median islands that we're looking at for some locations. Also introducing a combination of raised crosswalks and curb extensions. And I'll go through that in a little bit on the next slide. A raised intersection, accessible sidewalk ramps, and bike lanes will all be included as part of this project. These are some of the countermeasures that we were talking about. So in the upper left, that's one of our raised crosswalks. That's on Boulevard. You're probably familiar with that. That's been very effective at slowing down traffic. Also elevates the pedestrians, raises a little more awareness. So it provides some safety benefits for our pedestrians. Upper right, that shows dedicated buffer bike lanes and then also the curb extensions. So we actually bring that curb line out into the roadway. What that does allows the pedestrians to get a little bit further out into the road, shortens that crossing distance, and minimizes the amount of time that they're in the roadway crossing. So another safety enhancement there. In the center is our medians. Pretty straightforward. Those also help to kind of calm traffic, kind of narrows down your field of vision. I think that's on Farmington Avenue, I believe, is where that picture was taken. On the lower left, that's a raised intersection. So similar to the raised crosswalk, but the whole intersection gets brought up to that grade. So basically in all four approaches, you'd have a kind of a speed hump or transition where that intersection sits up a little bit higher. Again, traffic calming, both slows traffic and then improves the visual for the pedestrians. And then on the lower right is our bike lanes that we have throughout town, and we'd look to introduce in this project as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Samer. He'll walk you through a couple of cross sections and then get into some of the key locations for the concept plan. He'll walk you through those.
Hello, everyone. So the cross section is kind of split between South Main Street and Scarsdale, and then from Scarsdale down to Wardwell. So from South Main to Scarsdale, we're doing two 10-foot travel lanes, two 5-foot bike lanes, and they're not buffered. And then we have a parking lane on each side. There's 7-foot parking lanes, and at intersections, those will end up being curb extensions. And it's not at every intersection. It's mainly just to kind of slow down people coming into the corridor. So yeah, I mean, this is intended to kind of break up the monotony of pavement while still, you know, catering to every type of road user. From Scarsdale to Fairleigh, this is where we have, you know, the landscape medians. Again, those aren't everywhere just because driveways and side streets, but we have two 10-foot travel lanes. The bike lanes here are buffered, so it's a 2-foot buffer and a 5-foot bike lane. Yeah. So at South Main and Park Road, again, we wanted to eliminate that merge. So we reconfigured the Park Road westbound traffic. So we're getting rid of the two westbound through lanes, and we're giving it a dedicated right turn lane, dedicated left turn lane, and a through. Yeah, and everything else is largely the same. So this is a concept we've been playing with, a curb extension at Newport Ave. So the curb extension, again, Newport is kind of like the first major residential side street as you come into the corridor. So this is intended to kind of skinny the road down and, you know, encourage people to slow down. And we've gotten some requests for a crossing in this area because there's no crossing. So here we have proposed a crosswalk.
Question, is that going to be just a regular crosswalk or we don't know?
Open to suggestions, yeah. So here's Westminster. Westminster, as you guys probably know, it's a really wide street. So we're proposing curb extensions, but the curb extensions won't encroach onto Sedgwick. So it's mainly a curb extension on Westminster. We're extending that center island a little bit, just to, you know, again, reduce speeds of people turning in. And there's also a raised median there to the west of LeMay. And this crosswalk is raised across Sedgwick to LeMay. And there's a little refuge island there, so, you know, you could cross half the street and you could stand there and feel safe about it instead of being in the middle of traffic. This is the raised intersection at Wardwell. So here is, you know, we wanted to raise just one crosswalk, two crosswalks, and we ended up realizing, you know, there's a school there, visibility is paramount, so we decided to raise the whole intersection this way. So the crosswalks are raised along with the intersection, and there's another median island to the right there. In addition to that, on Tunxus, obviously it's, you know, the sightline issue there, and we have problems with people turning left onto Tunxus really quickly. So we're doing a hardened center line. It's kind of small, you can't really see it, but that's like right there. And that's basically like a little, like a modular speed bump, and you can just bolt it into the ground. So if someone was to take that turn really quickly, they'd hit the speed bump. So it encourages people to go all the way past that speed bump and take a turn slower. It's just another effort to, reduce speeds.
What about curb extensions on that Tungsten intersection? That's crazy with the Sedgwick Middle School there, kids getting to school, just wondering about curb extensions to just narrow that Tungsten road a little bit.
You're saying curb extension on Sedgwick?
No, on Tungsten and some sort of a crosswalk on Sedgwick,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, we can.
Kids are gonna be walking to school, they're not gonna, if they're coming from that area, they're gonna wanna go Tungsten across the street to Sedgwick and then maybe on to Duffy or wherever they're going.
Most of the crossing guards are at Dornwell and Sedgwick.
Yeah, they don't cross it. But there is a major crosswalk from Tunxus, from Sedgwick, across Tunxus onto Sedgwick again. So there's a major crosswalk in front of Tunxus Road there.
Yeah.
If you take a look at that, so you're gonna raise that.
You're saying the Tunxus Road crosswalk?
As you go, I guess, east down Sedgwick, and you get to Tunxus, there's actually the sidewalk actually splays out so that people can go across Tunxus right there and then come back up on Sedgwick.
Gotcha.
So it's a funky area there. There's a flashing stop sign right now. that People very, very rarely stop at. It's kind of a rolling stop there.
Yeah, well, I mean,
It's also really hard to see if you're coming up Tungus and thinking of, if you're heading north on Tungus and heading east on Sedgwick, it's actually really hard.
you're saying it's hard to see eastbound traffic? Yeah. Because of that angle, yeah.
There's no crosswalk there, so you're crossing a strange
Hmm.
where the curb goes out and then you're walking back across Tungsten. If you're just walking east on Sedgwick.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something we can look into.
The kids don't use it, but a lot of people walking on the Sedgwick Road use it.
Yeah.
Pretty heavily used.
Okay.
Joggers too.
This is just another example of the center median islands. These two in particular are at Sulgrave and Paxton. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's, again, the center median islands kind of break up the monotony of pavement. They introducing more curb, so it'll be harder to just fly down the road. We, yeah.
Is that the area of where there are buffered bike paths?
Yeah, so here there are buffered bike lanes. So it's a 2-foot buffer. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, it's hard to see here, but that brown is the center median. And then you have that buffer, the 2-foot buffer, and then the 5-foot bike lane. So you won't lose the buffer there.
Just curious, what's the plan for those center medians? Are they planting like trees like on all Asylum, which are a disaster?
That's TBD, I would say.
I mean, those are crap. I mean, I would think it would be interesting to have that a little bit raised so that deters people from, passing and going fast and.
You're saying the center median islands?
Yeah.
Yeah, so these, yeah, so the brown it's 6 inches. It's going to be a full curb. Where it's not brown, it's just, paint. But yeah, those are raised so you can't just drive over it.
Has there been any talk about maybe raising, just because I drive down the street all the time, my parents live on the street, and people will find any way to pass somebody that's going slow, and that bike lane, that 5 extra feet, is gonna give somebody the ability to go fast, because they're just gonna go on the bike lane to get around
Mm.
the other area. So is there something maybe like raising the bike lane a little bit or something to prevent them from?
That's a,
Yeah,
Because if you're waiting left, everybody passes you on the right in like the extra space.
yeah, the extra 7 feet
So
there.
if the buffered bike lane has a physical barrier that's raised, that you would have to drive over to go past somebody on the right to deter that.
Yeah.
Or have bollards of some.
We could look
sort.
into those, yeah, like those flex posts or, you know,
I get passed on the right a lot, like,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous.
yeah.
Turning into their driveway there on, their driveway is on Sedgwick, and there's cars that are parked on the other side of the street, and people will pass you in the parking lane of Sedgwick Road.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Do not wanna wait.
It'll also deter people from parking in like the bike buffer.
Yeah.
Right, also between Sawgrave and Paxton, that's where the hill is.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
might need a calming because people come over that hill at high speed.
Yeah. So,
You'll constantly see, I live right next to Westland, constantly see wrecks almost happen at Westland, LeMay, like that kind of corner where people are coming over the hill going really fast.
yes, I mean,
Can't really see very well.
Yeah.
at LeMay, we have that raised crosswalk.
Yeah.
That's where we're trying to, you know,
Is there, and so to that point, is there any further thought of moving the one-way streets down so that people can't, and if you live on Westland, I apologize, but if you're coming out of Westland, that hill causes real problems trying to get out of Westland. And so is there any, like, making more one-ways further down from South Main?
It's not something that we're really entertaining at this point. You know, those were really intended to solve a crash issue that we had on at the Boulevard, really, which they were successful in doing. But then they also had some other negative side effects associated with those. So I think we're at this point we're not looking to continue with those. But we recognize that Westland is you know, has some sight line restrictions and obviously the vertical curve, which we're not going to be able to change, but we will be looking at other calming measures, other things that we could do, features to help slow traffic through that area, recognizing that sight lines are a little bit limited through there. Let's go here, and then we can go ahead. Yes.
So I want to make a really important point, and there are 4 streets: Paxton, Scarsdale, Colton, and Ridgebrook. We only have one point of egress. Every other street up and down Sedgwick has 2 ways of getting out. If it's a school time or a busy commuting time, you can go out the other way, you can kind of avoid all this. The traffic that is going on Sedgwick, it's not a matter of speed, because I'm actually not a big fan of a lot of this stuff, because it's gonna make it harder for us to get out of our street. There are 77 houses on those 4 streets. I've lived there for 27 plus years. I speak from personal experience. Coming out of the street during busy times, when I'm going to work, when kids are going to school, since they changed the timing of the lights at Ridgewood and South Main, when I wait at my street, traffic is coming from Ridgewood, I can't take if I'm trying to take a left, now when that lets up, the traffic is coming from South Main. It's already extremely difficult if you're slowing down and condensing traffic, and trust me, I am all for safety. I mean, we all, I think, agree on that. We are landlocked, and so I really beg you, consider carefully these 4 streets that have only one point of egress, and every bump out and every median impacts my ability to get out of my street. And it's a problem, and I'm afraid it's gonna cause more accidents for those of us leaving that street. And I think people forget that because we're unique. We dead end in a cul-de-sac. We cannot leave except onto Sedgwick. So I really beg you to take that into careful consideration when you do bump outs and medians in that section from South Main to Paxton. Because then it opens up and you get into the school and the street widens a bit. I think it's gonna cause traffic jams. This morning I waited 3 cycles to go through the South Main light because Sedgwick had backed up so much. Now, if nobody can take a left turn there, now you're backed up even more. I zigzag across the boulevard. Nobody asked me about the one-way streets. I think they've caused more issues because now I have to turn right and then I hold up the traffic when I'm trying to turn left. So please consider that. I think these are some great ideas, but please, that section is very unique. And please keep that in mind.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I've been on Westland for 32 years, and the speed going on Sedgwick going west is definitely good. Is there anything that you could do in terms of, you have that light for school going during slow hours. Is there anything to make it more of a permanent type slow down there, something flashing? Because, going left out of Westland is very dangerous because of the sight and the speed, those 2 issues. So is there any way that, it's, you know, you have that school one,
Mhm.
but can we do some, is there a possibility to have something more permanent? Because, you know, people don't, you know, they don't. And I would always advise visitors, and my daughter was, she was doing the driving, not to go that direction, because it is a major concern. And even myself, it's still, you know, it is a dangerous turn left. So is that a possibility?
It's something we can look into. I know there's newer technologies. You know, one thing that maybe comes to mind, you know, if there's some kind of like an intelligent detection, so it knows that there's a vehicle on Westland, then you know you could have a sign that flash on Sedgwick, for example. We have that. It's not the exact application, but I'm thinking on South Main at the curve right down by Bentwood. Where there's a curve warning sign, but it only flash if you're above a certain speed. So we had a crash history there. So we wanted to catch those motorists that are going too fast and would likely go off the road. The sign starts to flash, and then it kind of alerts them. So oftentimes that's more signage isn't always the answer because it kind of starts to blend in. But if you find those unique, like we mentioned, the flashing stop sign on Tunx's, for example, when used selectively, they can be very effective at alerting motorists and getting their attention. So we could look at maybe something like that, some newer technology that might help with that intersection. So in the back, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So I've lived on Sedgwick for 35 years. I'm 2 houses from the Sedgwick-Wardwell intersection, so a lot of activity. So I just want to, similar to her, I appreciate this forum. I'm a little concerned with all the techniques that are being discussed here. It's almost like too much. I definitely think the raised crosswalks is great. I think that makes sense. If I understand correctly, from now Sedgwick crossing, Wardwell, is that going to be a single lane only?
That's what we have today. But they're wide.
They're wide because you get congested because when you have school, people are taking lefts, so people need to get by them. If they weren't able to get by them, there would be a huge backline. We had rumble strips for a while, which then people were stuck in. It was very congested, and I now park facing out, so otherwise I can't get out. So I'm trying to back out with this, and then when it's pickup time, people are parking on both sides of the curb, so I don't see how there's any room for what's being proposed. And these bike lanes are nice in theory, but it's taking a lot of room. And just as an aside, I see these bike lanes that abruptly end, and I kind of wonder is there teleportation going on with these bikes? Because I figure, what's happening? So it's nice, but it's just the bikes for safety, but the bikes add more complexity and really taking valuable real estate.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, and we're always looking at. That's why we carry it in some locations, primarily through the school frontage, is where we had the medians. Again, looking to slow traffic, provide the left turn lanes where it makes sense. So at Wardwell, we do have that eastbound left turn lane that provides a pocket. I think we added that maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. I know we've gotten some feedback from the school as well. We're going to be working with them closely as we move forward with the design. Obviously, I know their drop-off period, that 20 minutes in the morning, in the afternoon is a mess, which is consistent at every school throughout town. But we will be working with them to see how if there's opportunities to, maybe not necessarily directly as part of this project, but maybe, as we do work on Wardwell or other improvements, we could be looking to, improve that drop-off and pickup area for Sedgwick Middle School.
Yeah, 2 quick points. It brings up a good point. If you've ever gone on Webster Hill, when the school's getting out, you have the bike lane. If you have a bike, you'd be happy to drive underneath the cars because that street, both sides, is all packed up with cars. The bike lane, you can't ride a bike. But my other point is, and I don't have the answer to it, but if you're driving westbound on Sedgwick from South Main, to me, the most important point on that road westbound is where Soul Grade is. Because I walk West Hartford a lot. You know my story, right? But that point there, cars are flying, and that's pretty much the top of the hill. And I know we got those blinking lights down below. You couldn't pay me enough to be a crossing guard. And 2 weeks ago, it was almost a major accident with a child because they fly. it's a blind spot. Now you get to the top of that hill. If the light's not blinking and you don't have the crossing guards letting anybody go, they're flying. You need to do something at that point. Listen, I know you got raised crossing, I'm not saying add more, but if I was gonna add one there, that's where it would be, because the cars are flying. Those crossing guards, if they are helping children, you are at risk, because they don't know that they're crossing children or anybody else until they get to the top. They're already flying. You gotta slow them down at that point for westbound traffic if you don't do anything else. And I like everything I'm hearing, so I'm just saying, that's a critical point. If you don't do that, all these good things you're doing, you may be kicking yourself.
Yeah. Oftentimes, just let me quickly respond to that. You know, there's not any one magical solution. It's a lot of little incremental pieces that you piece together as part of a whole collective approach to solve these concerns. One thing that we're also working on, you may have heard it in the news, is our speed enforcement cameras. So we're looking at rolling those out, actively working. We just got our Taunton ordinance adopted, so now we're working through the process with the state to get those cameras deployed at 15 different locations, I think is what we're targeting throughout town. And you know, this might be a great location for one. We're going to be evaluating that, and that might be another piece that helps to combat this issue. And you know, the speed cameras, you know, they're intended to change behavior. It's not a revenue stream. It's a safety improvement. So they'll be well publicized. There'll be signage there. We really want you want people to slow down. We don't want people to get a ticket because they are speeding through there. The reaction we want is for people to slow down. So that's what those are geared towards, and hopefully this maybe that's an application we look to deploy one.
My only point though is that those raised crosswalks in multiple spots, we don't miss that.
Okay, thank you.
That's really key to keep the children safe.
Thanks.
Great, thanks. And so I think the 2 points I would make is that the other side of that hill is a real long stretch to the lights. And if there's not traffic or not going on, they really do build up speed. And I don't think there's a justified crosswalk anywhere between the top of the hill and the other side. And there are kids who, for whatever reason, try to cross that road before. So I don't want that long, wide open. And I know that, I think I get some of the strategies. Two things I noticed on a bike, and I do some guys here who are bike guys, and much more than I am, but using the model of Boulevard, the thing that we do with the jut outs, they are pinch points. When you're on a bike and you have to move to the left to go around the jut out, the car, and you're hoping that the car is also following those lines that swing, it's very disconcerting, and I'm a little naive, but I get very nervous because I don't know that they are conforming, and I get the idea that it visually does something, and we put a tree there, and then so I really don't love those too much. So I want to put that out there, especially if there's a bike lane. And then the last comment I would have is that I think that when we look at a road and we all drive down the road, we sort of want the road to make sense. And sometimes, if it doesn't really make sense after what we've seen our whole lives, some of the things that are considered maybe ingenious or ingenuity or some strategy. An example of that I would give is if you're driving down the boulevard and you know you can't take a right on 4 Mile, so you want to take a left on 4 Mile, because there's never 2 one-ways you can't turn on. And then the one-way sign is literally hiding behind a tree on the left as you approach South Main. And even if I know it, a couple of times I say, oh, I'll take, whoop, and I'm back in the other way. And that little narrowness that happens there, that's one of those shutouts. I do hear, I had people, I called about 5 people who live on Boulevard and said, what would you say? And I said, it's a little too narrow. Because when they go to pull out of their driveway, they almost swing. Even on Riggs, they gave the example of Riggs taking a right on the boulevard. They said your nose almost goes in the other lane because we didn't leave quite enough room, especially for their young drivers. So those are some of the comments I would make.
Okay, thank you. Let's go over here.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to South Main with a dedicated right-hand turn and a dedicated left-hand turn. I'm the last house on Sedgwick. I can't get out of my driveway many days. I wait for at least 4 or 5 light changes. If you make one lane going straight through, which is the majority of the traffic, and you dedicate a right lane and a left lane only, you're gonna have backed up traffic way back, almost to Riggs. There's just so many cars that do not go right, and by having two options, I think if you dedicate it, what's already a very difficult situation in getting out there is going to be impossible. So if 90% of the traffic is going on the highway and headed down to Park Road, you're making all 90% stay in that middle lane.
No, so let me correct that. So on the if you're heading eastbound, right? Because I think you're on this side of
Yes.
of South Main. So we're keeping that. It's a left turn lane through and a shared through and right. For
The
that
other
exact
side
reason.
is dedicated.
The other side is what we're changing.
Okay.
So that's where right now there's two through lanes, and then you have that merge that happens over here, and it's real abrupt right after you get through the intersection.
Okay.
So
I
that
heard
we're
you say
eliminating.
dedicated, and so you're
Yeah.
not.
No, we ran the analysis through here, and we recognize that, especially in the morning, that's a heavy through movement. And yeah, you're right, absolutely, it would back up quite a ways if we were to change that to make it a dedicated right for the eastbound.
And so you're making a single lane westbound because there's only a single lane coming into westbound from Park Road.
Correct, yep, so we only need one receiving lane on the other side.
Because we get people fighting right at Newport, or at 4 Mile. I mean, I hear honks.
Honks all day.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So first of all, I live at Newport in Sedgwick, and I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, so I'm like really excited about all this. I like the bump out idea. I guess one thing I was wondering, are you thinking about like a connection on the bike to the trail, the bike trail and trail?
We are, yeah, we're always looking at different ways to connect. We just revamped our bicycle facility guidance, basically our guidelines. So as part of that, there's a kind of a long-term planning map that identifies each street and where we're looking to create bicycle facilities. So yeah, there's that natural connection between from Sedgwick to Boulevard and that connection across to get to the Trupp Trail. So it may not be, I think that section of Park Road, we'll be looking at in the future. But right now, yeah, it's we're trying to, what would be that natural connection point, whether it be 4 Mile or Newport, how do we get people from Sedgwick to Boulevard and then over to the Trupp Trail? So yeah, we're always looking at those.
Also, like in regards to traffic, do you think that maybe if the road is slower and there's more traffic, that people will look to other routes and won't drive as much on Sedgwick? Like people get on the highway?
It's possible. I don't know that it would be noticeable. I mean, it's all part of the larger roadway network, really. So, Sedgwick Road it's an arterial. So it's intended to have the 8,000 vehicles per day. Sure, maybe if with the introduction of some of the raised crosswalks and things, folks may decide to take a different route. That might happen, but I don't know if it would be significant if you'd really notice it that much. Yes, go ahead.
The addition of the bike lanes, especially going from Sedgwick School, are you going to add more no parking areas?
So in those areas, let's see if I get to a decent shot. Here, I think that's it. So this is in front of the school, or close to it. But it's the same section. So anywhere we have the medians, the center turn lanes, and what we're calling the buffered bike lanes. So you have that 2-foot painted section. There wouldn't be any on-street parking. It would all be no parking in that section. So, what we did was we presented a balance. I know that's always been a kind of a hot topic when we looked at some of the other streets in town and introduced bike facilities. Is that balance between on-street parking versus dedicated bike facilities? So, yeah, in some areas we're showing the center medians with the buffered bike lanes, and then in other areas, kind of outside the limits of the school. Like here, for example, we just go to a traditional 5-foot wide bike lane, but then you have parking lanes on both sides. So, I mean, that's something I'm kind of curious, hear more from, folks that live on the street. If that, I know it's not heavily parked typically. There are a lot of side streets, but I don't want to get to the point where we're at, the final design, and then, we start hearing that, oh, parking is a major issue. We don't want the median. So just make sure we get that right.
I think in the morning, that drop-off situation.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever reasons, there are a lot of parents who seem to think they have to drop the kids off, even on tungstens. Both sides of the street can be cars. I mean, and it would have to be enforced.
Yeah, we'd certainly want to, obviously, that's not, we don't want people dropping off their kids on Sedgwick Road. We want them to obviously be using Wardwell. So it's, again, working with the school to, reinforce that behavior and making it manageable and easy for parents to get in and out of there. So.
Is the no parking area only near the school?
That's how we currently have it shown. So we're anywhere there's the raised medians, basically. So it's, let's see, and we have I should have pointed out, we do have a hard copy of the whole corridor. So after the meeting, folks are welcome to come up, take a look at it, and both Sam and I are available to answer any questions. But yeah, basically from right now, we're showing it from like Scarsdale is where that section would start, almost all the way down to basically Wardwell. You'd have that section with the center medians, the buffered bike lanes, and then there's no parking through that section.
I feel like that's a big section. I guess I'm surprised that the focus is the lower part by South Main, because to me that's, I've already expressed my concern about that, but up there is a much wider area where you could implement some other of these strategies, maybe?
Yeah, again, it's open for discussion. We certainly could continue that same section, cross-section through there, where we looked at doing medians and removing the parking. But again, we've gotten a lot of pushback in the past from that, so I'm not hearing that tonight. It sounds like most folks are supportive of that, and maybe we could explore continuing that bike facility with the buffer in lieu of on-street parking. So.
Why the medians between Paxton and South Main? Like, where is that coming from? Because that's a very tight area already. And,
so we don't have medians proposed in that section.
There's one at the end of my street, I believe.
That's the first one, right? Okay, that's fair. But it does provide, there is some benefit where you would have that ability to turn left from that area, so it kind of helps, to get you out of the flow of traffic to get in or out. So there's pros and cons to all of it.
The bump out comments, that those have actually caused a little bit more challenge on other streets.
Okay.
You show on Sedgwick where it hits South Main, the bike lane disappears at Ridgebrook. Is there going to be some kind of crosswalk, or what do you expect the bikes, are they allowed on the sidewalk then?
Teleport.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's always the challenge, is at the intersections. We had a lane in each direction, and now we have 4 travel lanes. Again, just because you have that, that capacity issue at the intersection. So what we did was we transitioned it. It becomes a shared facility. So basically, yeah, the cyclists are traveling in the lane at that point until they get through the intersection. And again, we don't really have a facility yet on Park Road. So you could either tie into South Main, which is also a shared facility, off and transition over to Boulevard through either 4 Mile or Newport.
So backing up to 4
Mm-hmm.
Mile, is there any crosswalk there? I mean, I guess how hard is it to take crosswalk left?
It's not about how hard, it's about where they're most appropriate, where you would have the pedestrian usage. So we want to put them in places where they'll be utilized and people expect to see pedestrians. We also want them somewhat equally spaced along the corridor. So that's why we're proposing one at Newport. And then you have the one at LeMay at Wardwell. So they're kind of at this somewhat regular frequency. So it provides a pretty balanced opportunities to cross. There is a bus stop, and that was one of the things that came out of the road safety audit. I think it was at Paxton, right? There was some concerns over the location of that stop. Yeah, so I think that was one of the things they were going to look at. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot along the corridor, so. So we'll be working with them as part of this, maybe either consolidating stops, or if it makes sense to shift one further up or down the street. It eliminates a pinch point or a safety issue. They're open to that.
No parking area by Sedgwick and Newport. I lost my Newport parking area when Newport was narrowed, and I have friends who use that area on Sedgwick.
You said at Newport. No, there would still be the ability at that location. What we're showing right now, we'd have just the traditional bike lanes, and then you'd have the adjacent parking lane. So there would be an opportunity to park along Sedgwick. Yeah.
I apologize, I didn't realize before, but you think, just talking about it, Newport's the right spot for that crosswalk because of the hill and the speed coming over the hill. There's enough sight line. You feel good about that?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at my neighbors, but down on Sedgwick across from 4 Mile, I don't think we have a lot of people looking to park down there. I don't think that anybody pulled down the ridge quickly. So I don't think there's a parking need there. But I can understand the people that live across from Newport. Yeah, when people visit, they want to park across the street, and now there's no
And that's the challenge, right? I mean, we don't want to keep changing the cross section back and forth and flip flopping. That creates some challenges. So that's why I think we kind of focused on at least what we're showing right now through the school area where we're doing the raised medians. So.
I just want to follow up on behalf of my Paxton neighbors who live on the Sedgwick end, to point out that there are 4 or 5 houses that park in an alley, and the alleyway lets out onto Sedgwick. So on their behalf, I mean, it's hard enough for them to get out, but I would hope they would still have the ability to turn left or right, which would mean an impact for them. I don't live on the alley, thankfully, but I know that can be a challenge for them to turn out.
Yeah. Are they? And I don't know off the top of my head. Are they able to come out nose face forward? So they're driving forward out on Sedgwick, so they have the ability to turn around. Okay.
I think they can turn around. I think most people do come out.
Okay.
All right. That I've seen.
Yeah, that's one of the things we looked at, and that's part of the reason that it's so difficult to locate some of the raised medians, because with all the driveways, if they're across from one another, obviously we don't want to restrict somebody's ability to get in or out. So it sometimes really limits how many we could do and their placement, and also the length of those.
At what point does Sedgwick towards Park become 2 lanes on the
On Park Road, so.
Sedgwick side? Yeah, so right now, like in front of 25 Sedgwick, like it's 4 lanes wide. You're proposing that the, westbound lane is gonna be 1 lane, so now is it 3 lanes?
Yeah, but that cross section, and we didn't show it here. It's just off the page, but yeah, basically at the bridge, which so it's. It would open up to the 2 through lanes, and the left turn pocket would open up, right. So basically where the shopping plaza is, right at that point, give or take. Great questions, great input.
I heard the bridge is going to be redone. Is that still in the plan?
It's something we're looking at. It's not on the short-term horizon, but it will be. Yeah, there will be repairs that eventually will need to happen on that bridge. So we've been doing periodic inspections, partnering with the state. So we'll be continuing to look at that and programming for it in the future, but not as part of this project.
Like lower priority going westbound off of Park onto Sedgwick. It's occasionally during rush hour, you'll get caught in a couple of cycles of the light going straight. I imagine, and that's when people are zippering into a single lane once they get over. I imagine if you go to a single lane, unless you change the light timing, it'll back up pretty far off apart.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll certainly look at this as we implement this new lane arrangement. We'll run it through our software and tweak those timings accordingly. And it may be different depending on the time of day too. There's different timing patterns we can run as the directional volumes shift. So.
I think I have two easy questions. One is the buffered, but what you're calling a buffered bike lane is just an additional stripe.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, at this point we haven't looked at any kind of a raised, either a pylon or sometimes they do almost like a curb wheel stop, something like that. It's something we could look at. Obviously, it presents challenges, particularly during the winter months with snow removal, because now you only have that 5-foot lane. Right now, it would if there's no raised facility or feature there, they could plow it normally. Right to the curb line. So that's just one of the challenges. I know, as you're aware, on New Park Avenue, we are looking at that as part of that design, which we're hoping to get into construction pretty soon. So that's going to kind of be our pilot to see if that'll function, and then from there we can see if we start implementing that in more places. But that speaks to, there was the issue about people mentioned about parking in the bike facility. So if we did introduce something like that, that would obviously prohibit that if you had any kind of a raised feature in that area between the travel lane and the bike lane, and then also provides a safety benefit with some separation between the cyclist and the motorists.
So my other question is just kind of broad. I don't live down that way in town, and I rarely drive it or bicycle. But I'm just curious, and you can't answer this question. Maybe other people can tell me after the meeting. Did all these traffic problems that people are having, do they happen basically 2 times a day during Monday through Friday? Is that, and don't have to answer now because it's a
Mm-hmm.
question. But I'm just curious, are we engineering for those 2 times 5 days a week, or is this all the time? Does this go on constantly? Anyway.
I'm seeing heads nodding, so I think it's. So yeah, probably concentrated at those peak periods, but yeah.
I just know that it's very fast.
Mm-hmm.
When I do drive it to get
right.
over to the mall, people are driving
mm-hmm.
just like everywhere else.
Right.
I don't know if it can be part of this project, but that crosswalk there on South Main, my daughter tries to cross it with the crossing thing. People are running the red light and turning right on red all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any more prominent, right on red sign, it's, she has a real hard time. All directions,
Mm-hmm.
people are running that light and turning.
Mm-hmm.
And so the crosswalk turns it.
Yeah, we hear that unfortunately quite a bit, and it is posted no turn on red, commonly ignored. One of the solutions to that, and we're looking to pilot it at a couple locations, is what we call dynamic no turn on red signs. So they would work in concert with the pedestrian push button, so that when a pedestrian put that call in to cross the street, you'd have a sign up next to the traffic signal that would illuminate no turn on red. So again, it's that active, that message only appears when it's needed because you have a pedestrian trying to cross. It's not part of this project. Like I said, we're going to try it at a few other locations. I think Troutbrook at Farmington is one that we're looking to roll that out at. We're also looking at Park at Troutbrook, coming southbound. Folks making that right turn to get on the highway. That will be another location we're looking at. So we've purchased some of those that equipment. We'll be implementing it in the months ahead. And then evaluating it, and if it's successful, then yeah, maybe it's something we can implement here as well.
It's where it's already no turn on red, but it just
kind of reinforces that. Yeah, here it's more for you have that sightline issue. There's some other constraints. It's kind of linked to the exclusive pedestrian operation as well.
My daughter works in the building right on the corner.
Okay.
The director of that PT clinic there.
Okay.
It brings her business because people are constantly
Unfortunately, yeah.
crashing
Sure.
into each other right in front of her.
Yeah.
I've said it at least a couple times a week.
Yeah. So. Yes.
Have you guys started to think about road shutdowns when you start doing this work?
We haven't gotten that in depth yet. Again, this is early stages. Most likely it would be, probably lane shifts. Again, we're not looking at shifting the curb lines or doing anything, major as far as that. So it would really be, some of the bump outs, some of the median construction. So we'd still maintain traffic flow on the street. We don't anticipate, being detours. There might be some short term, depending on where they're working, that we may get into on a case-by-case basis. The biggest would probably be when we're actually doing the milling and the paving of the roadway, which would be towards the end of the project. So. Yes. Yep. So.
So you're getting a lot of feedback. Is there potential some of this will change based on the feedback? Because again, I've been on the road for over 35 years, Sedgwick, and I've seen experiments go, and it seems like another one where there's a lot of things being proposed, and I think it's going to cause some challenges. In the bump outs, and as we talked, I was really stunned when those showed up because I was like, wow, because you got to. I could see where people would slam into them, and my kids' friends come from other towns, colleges visiting. They're like, whoa,
yeah.
And the one ways, the bump outs, and the fact that it's still being proposed. Has there been accidents, issues? It just seems to me it's like an anomaly to have these bump outs.
No, they've actually been a proven, safety countermeasure. One of the things that we're looking to do here is to roll out what we're calling quick builds. So these would be, we show you the delineator post there in that little picture insert. So in some of these critical locations, try those out with, they'd be paint markings on the roadway. And then we'd have a series of these delineator posts. Gives us an opportunity to try it before we go and implement it with permanently with hard curbing and things. This gives us an opportunity to just see how it's received by the community. If the posts are constantly getting hit and destroyed and go missing, then we know we got to tweak it and adjust it. So the thought time-wise is to try and roll some of these out over the next several months. Let it run through the winter. And then we'd get into construction most likely in 2026. So we want to make sure we have a little bit of time while school's in session. So I don't know if we'll make necessarily this spring, but certainly have those in place for the fall so we can see how that interacts with the buses and with kids crossing. We think there'll be some great safety improvements. Again, just trying to reduce those crossing widths. Slowing traffic down as you're making those turns. Obviously, you can't take the turn as aggressively if you have a narrower roadway width that you're turning into. So everything that we're trying to do, again, is to promote safety. So this gives us an opportunity to kind of try it out.
Yeah, so I live at the part of Sedgwick where there is going to be a bump out and where they could build out Newport. And someone drove over the curb into my yard off the Sedgwick. It's really dangerous, yeah, so I feel like the bump, I'm supportive.
Okay.
I thought I remember seeing on, but instead of doing the island, the red paving stones, that's a good way, because it kind of makes you not want to drive on them, but at the same time, you're not going to bottom out your car, or if there's an emergency, you got to get by.
Right.
It doesn't prevent you.
Yeah.
I look at the house quarter of LeMay and Sedgwick. You're considering a bump out of the median, or the island, and then tightening that entrance, right?
Correct.
Make the distance between the sidewalks closer?
Yes.
The reason I say that is people are going, if you make it temporary, like you're trying it out, people are going to run over those things going from LeMay to Sedgwick as they go to Duffy. Because they're trying to cross at high speed because people are coming down that hill at high speed. They're going to run those over as they cross.
That's one of the things we're gonna see. Obviously we before we go and implement curbing, we want to make sure that we have the dimensions right and they're providing the benefit that we like to see. And hopefully they have that calming effect and people are taking it a little bit slower.
Yeah, I just wonder if instead, alternatively, widen the island. If you're trying to shorten the distance of the lane, widen the island so that there's more of a straight shot from 1A to that road.
You're saying that people coming across Sedgwick going south?
Across Sedgwick down to Duffy.
Okay.
People dropping their kids, drop their kids off at the middle school, and then race across, trying to get across traffic
Okay.
down to Duffy. And right now, it's a fairly straight shot going
Yeah.
across. But if you narrow it, people are going to run over those.
There's a little zigzag maneuver, sure. Yeah, one of the things maybe we can deploy. We have a traffic camera that we can deploy just to get some of those visual observations, and then we can review those just to see what that crossing maneuver looks like. Other comments?
I want to ask about traffic lights only because when we're talking about the backing up and the impatience at the lights, I'm hearing my own argument a couple of times. Like if there's something you don't expect, they tend to do what they want to do or what you would usually do. And so I have noticed, and I guess around town, that if I go to a stoplight every day for 20 years and it lets 4 or 5 cars through, that's sort of my expectation. And at South Main is an example of where every now and then in the morning I go and it only lets 2 cars go through. And then you let 2 cars go through, then 2 cars go through, and the third time only 2 cars get through, 2 people run the red light because it seems unreasonable in some way. And so I'm just sort of wondering about, is that AI? How does that work? And is there a way to make it more consistent? Because I think same light 4 times a day for 30 years, somehow, I don't know.
Yeah. No, so there's cameras that will detect the vehicles at each intersection. Anytime we have the what we call quad phasing out there, where we have the 4 left turns, it kind of adds addition, because you not only have the green time for that left turn, but then you have a yellow clearance phase and then all red. So what seems like if it's a 100 second cycle length, seems like a lot of time, but when you divide all those pieces of the pie and you take out 25 seconds for the ped crossing, you're not left with a whole lot of green time. So again, you're trying to divide that as equitably as you can. In this case, Main Street is the coordinated phase, so we're trying to give them as favoring Main Street over Sedgwick a little bit. But it's something we can look at. Maybe there's a tweak to to give them a little bit more time, based on time of day. And we do look at our signal timings. We look at traffic volumes and do some modeling just to make sure that everything's running as it should be. But I know we've had that comment before, so it's certainly something we can take a look at.
I get South Main is a very big intersection, but Sedgwick Road is also too, because it goes into Park and it goes to the highway. So having that a little bit longer will help a lot too, because that is a really big intersection where everybody's coming in, to get to 84 and get on 84.
Yep.
It would be good to look at that.
Okay. Anything else? I think we covered all of our slides. We kind of jumped into the questions a little sooner, but that's fine. I think it was a good conversation. I appreciate all the input. Just to quickly, I'll go through our schedule here. So as I mentioned, we're here at the public outreach phase. So we're going to take these comments that we've heard tonight, start incorporating and building our, advancing it, the design. We'll look at implementing some of the quick builds that we talked about. Again, kind of trying those out, making sure that the improvements that we have in mind are going to have the desired effect. Wrap up the design probably sometime this fall, and then we'll be ready to go to bid and award it over the winter. So it would be spring, summer construction. Obviously, we keep in mind with the school, the most impactful would be the paving. So we'd likely do that during the summer break, but there might be some other work in advance of that, at the curbing, bump outs, things like that. That could happen before that. So.
Great question. Will there be another meeting like this for residents to review what people have said? And going to incorporate for us to have another discussion, or we go right from this phase to
We could. We didn't have it planned. We could certainly share the design. Hopefully, if everybody's signed up on the sign-in sheet, we could certainly share that through email. We could post it on the website. We didn't necessarily have a plan for another informational meeting, but if that's something that people feel strongly about, as we progress through the design, we could certainly consider that. So.
There's been a lot of feedback and a lot of things that you probably won't be able to do, some that you will be able to do.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Well worth it for such a big project.
Yep. No, that's a good point. We can do that.
Do you have money in the bank for this, or is there still pending support from the state?
No, so we do. So we have the grant funding, the 1.25 million, which largely covers the, mostly the resurfacing cost. And then we have some other funding through Vision Zero that I talked about earlier that we'll use to supplement, to implement some of the safety improvements that we're adding into the project that weren't originally anticipated. So, yeah, I mean, things are costing a little bit more than we've anticipated, certainly in the past, but we do have funding available for this project. So I don't see a reason it wouldn't go forward. It's not a great picture, and I apologize, a little small, but it's up in the top right. You can see this is a sample from what's on Boulevard. So it may be a little bit different as it relates to Sedgwick, but that's essentially what we'd be looking at. The lengths may vary depending on where they are along the corridor, but that's ultimately what you'd be looking at.
Sorry, one more comment. The crosswalks are there, but like, people never stop. Like, I've been frightened as a child at school,
Mm-hmm.
and still, like, 4 cars go by.
Yeah.
So I just feel like enforcement.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know, yeah, and we've implemented, you've probably seen them out there, the pedestrian warning lights, the RFBs they're called. So they're, again, actuated by the pedestrian, they'll start flashing. They're still a little bit new to the community, so now the feedback, of course, that we're hearing is you push the button and people still don't stop. Again, that's a behavioral thing that we're working on. That's on us. We need to do a little bit better job of educating the public as well, and we're working towards that. But we'll be rolling out, there's a couple others that go in as part of this project, I believe. I think right now at Wardwell, they're only on the east side of the intersection, so we'll be adding another pair on the west side. So you push the button and all 4 of them on all 4 corners will start flashing. And then at Newport, where we're adding the new crosswalk, we'd have the pedestrian warning lights there as well. And I think as you see these more and more throughout town, I think people will become a little more accustomed to them, and hopefully we'll see a better yield rate as we move forward. Hang on one second. Yeah, it presents some challenges. Yeah, so in warmer climates, they've used those. But yeah, I mean, then you end up with, the durability of those isn't great either, getting run over all the time. So.
Is it optional for cars to stop when a pedestrian pushes it to get in, or is it like if you're breaking the law if you don't come to a stop?
The law in Connecticut is you're required to yield to a pedestrian in the crosswalk. No, it's still the amber, and we hear that quite a bit. There's the federal standard, so that from state to state, everybody's consistent, and it's the amber warning lights is what's allowable. But yeah, we've heard that before, whether it should be red or yellow. But yeah, that's unfortunately what we're.
Just a FYI, it's also curb to curb, so if a pedestrian is in the crosswalk, I have people honking at me all the time because I will not go through.
Mm-hmm.
So they get to the other curb, and people get really mad.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not to cross.
Yeah.
Any signs that, because I hear from people all the time, they don't mean to stop.
Mm-hmm.
So they can cross. It means to slow down a little bit, but they go through the crosswalk anyway.
Mm-hmm.
If you put up the signs for them, what they're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to do.
Yeah.
People say, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there are signs. It'll say yield here to pedestrians, and it just shows an arrow. They're typically about 20 to 50 feet in advance of the crosswalk, and you'll also see those with call it shark teeth on the pavement. Where am I looking? No, those are a little bit there. Those on the. I don't think we have a picture of them, but you'll now that we mentioned it, hopefully you'll see them maybe even on your drive home. But we've introduced them. They're just triangle shark teeth, basically, and it kind of mimics a yield sign. But that's intended to alert the motorist, hey, this is where the point at which you're supposed to yield to the pedestrian in the crosswalk. So.
Where there are a couple of crosswalks in that very short spot, there are, like road signs up that say yield to pedestrians. Is that something that can be done with these crosswalks?
Probably not in this location. Those signs take a beating, unfortunately. They don't survive quite as much as we'd like. Even with slower speeds on LaSalle Road, those are constantly getting hit. Yeah, so not really a viable. And as part of that, the reconstruction project that's going on, we're looking to make some improvements and changes. So those most likely wouldn't come back out. I know we had one at over by Fern at Morley School, and that one, again, they just fortunately don't last that long with whether it be the turning maneuvers or buses or what, or sometimes just motorists unfortunately driving too fast that will take those out. So all things that we're working towards.
With these mediums that you're not putting any foliage in them, correct?
Hasn't been decided yet.
I would not, because I have to tell you, the foliage that's on the medians on Farmington Ave, it blocks vision. And and they've gotten bigger, the trees, and while they're nice trees, they block vision. So I would really recommend not any foliage above your knees, or probably not in the airport, because they really do block. And I don't know why the town still has them there, because they really block sight.
They do a couple things. Obviously, you want to delineate the median, so that visually it helps drivers to see that there's something there. So we've done that with delineator posts as well as the trees that are out there, and the delineator posts obviously have some reflective striping on them. But yeah, it is a concern with visibility if they're not pruned up high enough. But yeah, I think even if we did some shrubs, some lower plantings, things like that. But then the trees also provide again, it's that narrowing of the roadway. So visually they help to kind of calm traffic, slow things down. And we've done some counts on that on Farmington. There's 3 sections we looked at where there's no medians, where there's just the flush, and then when there's raised, and those where there's the raised medians, that's where you have the slowest speeds. So it kind of makes sense. So. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm going to put up our last slide. If you wanted to take down, excuse me. So this is Samer's contact information. If you have any questions, you can email him, and he can respond. And then also we can look at the plan up front, answer any questions anybody might have. And then sign in if you haven't. Thank you, everybody.